Appreciate you clicking on this review. I just got back from watching Werewolves. And in Werewolves, we basically follow a world where everybody has a mutant werewolf gene in their DNA, making it so that one night a year when there is a supermoon, everybody who is in the moonlight will be transformed into a werewolf. Taking place now on the second year of this phenomenon, we follow a group of people trying to find a cure and survive the night of werewolf mayhem. And that's all pretty much. I got any spoilers to you guys. This will be a spoiler-free review. This is the kind of film that once you hear the premise or someone tells it to you, which the way they basically sold this is The Purge, but with werewolves, give me a ticket. I want to see it. And man, I was just hoping it would not let me down. Because you look at the trailers and you see the gnarly practical effects work that are being put on these werewolves. You even have Frank Grillo that is really helping that whole Purge meets werewolves comparison. It's a movie where you hope they don't botch the premise, because man, you could easily see how this would be a lot of fun if done right. And well, having seen the movie, I think it exceeded some of the expectations I had for this film. Let me start off with the good, and then I'm gonna get into the things that kind of hold it back a little bit. But for one, it is the practical effects on these werewolves. It feels like werewolf movies have kind of taken a break. I don't know if I want to blame Twilight for all of that, but I am gonna blame some of it on Twilight. But we're headed to a small resurgence with this movie, and we have Wolfman being released next month by Blumhouse. It's like, okay, we're getting a little bit more of that werewolf action. And well, this movie hiring the same creature effects department that worked on the Alien franchise and also on the Predator franchise, the werewolves just look all the better for it. I'm not a complete hater on CGI or any movies that want to, but this is a lower budget movie. Heck, it's even a limited release film, so only a couple of theaters in your area might be playing the movie. And so unless you have that truckload of money to just spend on the VFX and really make the CGI wolves look good, practical is the way to go. And man, did I have a lot of fun with the werewolves in here. Like, one thing I was not expecting, which comes to the thing of this movie kind of exceeding my expectations a couple of times, is the werewolves have some personality to them. This is a universe where if you decide to step outside and let the moonlight hit you, you will be transformed into a wolf. And when the entire world has that capability, well, imagine people with colored hair or piercings or whatever clothes you were wearing. I like that the movie actually does that, because as our heroes go out through the night, you encounter a couple of werewolves that look distinctly different from one another. And that little added touch of personality just made the movie fun for me. And you know, getting back to the exceeding expectations part, since people were comparing this to like The Purge meets werewolves, well, I'm gonna compare it to that first Purge movie, which I remember when it came out, a lot of people were disappointed, because that was a movie where it had an awesome premise, a premise that people still like to this day, where one night a year, any crime is legal and you can just purge and have fun. And so what did they do with that first movie? Keep it all entirely to one house and basically make it a home invasion movie. People were like, what? I want to see what the other streets look like, what other crimes are being committed. This feels like a waste of a premise, having such a cool idea, but just only letting us see one house. Now, they recorrect it when it comes to the sequels. But when it comes to werewolves, they do a lot of the things you're hoping to see in this universe. You get that little bit of a home invasion story where some people board up their houses, and what happens if werewolves are trying to get into that house? How does that go? You have a storyline of scientists who are like, okay, this happened last year. We have one night to figure out how this works. Can we cure it? That's interesting. And they don't hold back on letting you see what the streets are filled like with werewolves running around and how you have to safely make your way across town. Like, there's so many aspects of this world you start thinking about that you hope they show you, and they do. Because it's also the right amount of ridiculous, but also taking it seriously that helps the movie stay fun. There's a group of people that believe turning into a werewolf is their birthright and they should be allowed to, while there's other people that's like, no, I'm gonna hunt you down if you turn into a werewolf. That's where I was really afraid of, that they'd have such a cool premise, but because it was a lower budget film, which, by the way, I can't seem to find the actual budget online. If anybody else has it out there, please comment it down below. But it feels like the movie was made on no less than $5 million to $10 million max. And so I was afraid maybe it'd be one of those movies with like a really cool premise, but they just don't use it properly. But thankfully, I don't think that was the case with Werewolves. You get a lot more than you're expecting throughout the course of this movie. When it comes to the characters and stars in this movie, I like Frank Grillo. A lot of us might recognize him, you know, from the Captain America movies, being a villain in there. At times, it does very much feel like he's just, again, playing the character from the Purge movies, but this time hunting down werewolves. One thing I will say is pretty funny is he's like a biologist, so he's one of the people trying to work on the cure, and just the amount of shirtless tough guy scenes, and you're like, that guy really smart enough to figure out the cure? Come on now. Then again, Ivan Drago, Dolph Lundgren, boy has like 3 PhDs. Would not expect that looking at him. I will break you. But you know, on that point of Rocky movies, this movie definitely feels like a throwback to 80s, 90s action movies. It has that B flavor to it. Like, don't expect a lot of heightened thinking, surreal performances. But it is that kind of movie you watch that it's like, I don't know if it's going to get the recognition it deserves now in today's day and age. But if this exact movie was made 30, 20 years ago, bro, we'd have like 10 movies. It'd be a cult classic. There'd be a whole franchise revolving around this series. But in today's age where there's so many larger scale, bigger movies, this one is just gonna pass by, but it's an entertaining one to watch. Even the buildup in going into the movie and waiting for the moon to finally come and someone to transform into a werewolf, because that's a big thing you go into when you see a werewolf movie, right? Is how does the transformation scene look? That's a very iconic part of a werewolf movie. You got to get down right. And that's where the movie knows where to allocate its budget. You know, it'll save some money here, maybe not go so big on this action scene. But when it comes to the werewolf transformations, although it's done through CGI, I think it looks really cool. Mixed in with the sound effects and bones crunching and body parts morphing, it's a really gnarly transformation. I don't know if it'll hit iconic status, but it does the job. So heck, on that note, let's get into some of the things that hold this movie back. I still think at the end of the day, you're going to have fun. You're going to be entertained, but there's a part of you that should check action expectations at the door. While I love the practical effects and the werewolves in here, I guess there is a trade-off with them because they're a lot slower and there's a lot of shots of them just kind of standing up, and you get that really cool visual of like some light hitting them. Maybe they're drooling, the little animatronic work on the snouts and mouths, but when it comes time for them to pounce, action, chase, and even fight, that's where you could see, okay, I see maybe why we don't always do practical effects, because you see the limits of what wearing the suit or the puppeteering can do. I will say some of the action is a little lackluster. It's a lot of shaky cam, quick cuts. You can't always tell exactly what's going on. Well, I still definitely want to commend them and give them their props for extending out this budget and doing a lot more than I expected in terms of building out their universe and just really fulfilling the plot that they laid out. It still has its moments where you tell this is a lower budget film. There's a moment where like it's starting to rain and you can tell they're just using CGI rain, and that doesn't look great. You also have another moment where like a character is getting down on their knees crying against a wall, and because of the lighting and shadows in that room, you can see the shadow of the boom mic on the wall, and that was pretty funny. But overall, it's a balance thing. To me, there was a lot more cooler things they did with this lower budget and the practical effects werewolves, that all the kind of cheaper, maybe not so polished stuff that they could have done with a little bit more money doesn't hurt the film in my opinion. But it will be noticeable to some. Overall, I had a great time with this movie. I think it takes the ridiculous stuff serious enough where you can have fun with it, but not so serious that you're like, this is just so dumb. I love that there was enough moments in this movie where I literally was looking at the screen and just going, oh, hell yeah. And that's really what it is. It's just entertainment, fun, and you know what? I hope we get another movie in this franchise, because just the possibilities of what you could do in this world and how creative they already got with this movie, I can only imagine what else they'd want to do with other movies. So when it comes to werewolves, I'm going to give action 2.5 stars. I feel like this was really the part that I was kind of underwhelmed with, is some of the action sequences. A lot of it is because they're trying to hide the puppeteer work and animatronic work with the werewolf, so they're limited to what they can do there. Some shaky cam and quick cut, so it wasn't the best part of the movie, but still good enough to get you by. Commenting the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. There are like a couple jokes here and there thrown, but the way the movie is so ridiculous at times while still being serious, I think keeps it fun. Drama in the movie, I'm gonna give it 3 stars. The overall storyline is pretty simple and straightforward, but I just like how much they were able to expand this world, do different things, really kind of immerse you into what it would be like if werewolves out there for one night. Like, that's where it surprised me the most, is how many different things they were able to do with the premise. Or in the movie, I'll give 2 stars too. I do think the werewolves look awesome. There's a couple of bloody sequences, although I would have liked a little bit more bloodshed, higher body count. Suspense in the film, I'm gonna give it 2.5 stars. I think it does do a really good job of building up right before the moon comes out and people turn into werewolves, while also setting up the final battle that was crazy, but so fun. Casual moviegoers, I'm gonna give this a B+. Cinephiles, I'm gonna give it a B-. And critically, I'm going to give it a B-. Werewolves to me was as fun as I was hoping it would be, and even exceeded a little bit of my expectations in terms of the world building. So for that, I think it's worth watching in theaters. Again, that's just my opinion on the movie, guys. Hopefully you can find a theater in your area that is playing the film. If not, when this thing hits online, I do recommend you check it out. Even at home, I think this would be a really fun movie to watch. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.